I'm Chris Nesi, host of Behind the Mic, Voices of the EPN, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, I recently was interviewed by Chris Nesi, the founder of EPN. EPN is the Education Podcast Network. He has a podcast called The House of Edtech on there, and he also has his podcast called Behind the Mic. Behind the Mic is where he interviews the other podcasters on EPN. That's right. He talks to us about, why we made the podcast, why we stuck with it, what happened along the way, what equipment we use, what we learned from mistakes, and what we learned from just by doing. And it's pretty cool, and you get to hear from all of us. So good stuff. I'll put a link in the show notes. I hope you go listen to it as well as share it with a friend. That'd be so cool. Thanks. Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today I'm talking with Ryan Ross. Ryan is the CEO and founder of Olivia Technologies. Our focus is providing access to digital content for your students who, because of their location, do not have access. Great focus. Awesome talk. So much to learn. Thanks for listening. And oh, by the way, it'd be so cool if you went to my website, stephenmiletto.com/reviews and left a review. Could you do that for me? You are so awesome. Enjoy the show.
40% of students don't have access to viable broadband. And it really was a eye-opener to me. And so we looked at developing a platform that doesn't require broadband to deliver digital resources. Once that thought came together, we realized we could do this, and we can do it inexpensively, and we can do it for every student across the U.S.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Miletto. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. With Dr. Steve Miletto.
Ryan Ross is a determined, innovative, and productive professional with a proven track record in Edtech, emerging Fintech, and Wi-Fi edge technologies, as well as early-stage sales and business development. With his impressive skills and experience, Ryan has also secured a patent in his field. He is highly motivated by new and emerging technologies and stays ahead of the curve in his field. Ryan's in-depth knowledge of go-to-market strategies is impressive. He has extensive experience in Internet of Things edge content, advertising, and services for transit, retail, and enterprise solutions, as well as payment transactions and point-of-sale infrastructure. Ryan is also well-versed in biometric payments, recurring payments, B2B commerce, and consumer e-commerce services. His exceptional knowledge and ability to deliver revenue and customers make him a valuable asset in strategic thinking and execution, ultimately leading to success. Ryan's specialties include business development, strategic partnerships, reseller, and alliances, making him a versatile and well-rounded professional. This knowledge base, along with the ability to deliver customers and revenue, provides a level of strategic thinking and execution that leads to success. Ryan is the founder and CEO, as well as a board member of Olivia Technologies, and that's our focus today. Ryan, thanks so much for being on the show, and say hi to everyone.
Well, Stephen, first, thank you for inviting me to the show. I'm really looking forward to sharing the Olivia story and how we can impact, a very large population of students that struggle to get access to digital resources. And so really appreciate the opportunity and the time and looking forward to this conversation.
Hey, all right, Ryan. I read in your bio, he is highly motivated by new and emerging technologies and stays ahead of the curve in his field. What emerging technologies have your attention and why?
This is a great question, Stephen, because technology is evolving every day and in all aspects. And so, when you look at school district superintendents, the IT staff, this is a real struggle to try to figure out where to spend your time and resources. And I think when you look at what's trending in the industry, of course, AI is on the top of that list, right? And AI is such a fascinating and scary technology all at the same time. And so I think when I'm looking at that landscape, it's all about how you create efficiencies with technology, right? Reducing the time it takes to do something with better outcomes. And so nobody cares about technology, to be frank. They care about how well your iPhone works, and does it do something, that I want it to do, and you don't think about how it works. And that's the way technology should be for most people, other than the people that have to create it and support it. So, my focus is around making technology the background noise, and looking at how you focus in on the user experience and delivering those experiences that are meaningful for the folks that it's designed for in that space.
That's so cool because, it's because you're right. There's really, most of us, all we're worried about is if I push the button, does the button do what it's supposed to do, right? and as opposed to right now, there's something about an Apple iPhone that I do that makes all my apps, it suddenly asks me, do you really want to delete all these apps? It's like, no, what is it? No.
Yeah, where did that come from?
Exactly. It's like, who put that shortcut into this phone, especially on mine? It's like, I'm
wondering the same thing. I run into that problem very frequently.
I'm like, no, don't do that. I have to say this because there's a commercial out right now for Apple Watch. I'm not sponsored by them, by the way. It's anybody listening. So this is not a subtle placement of an ad or something. But they're snapping their fingers to turn things off and on, and I'm like, yeah, that, they're pulling them together, and I'm like, that's not a good thing for me because suddenly I'll do some combination of it and it would delete everything or something, like. Nice.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's so cool what you're talking about, because there's so much stuff happening now, and I mean, in the last bunch of years, I mean, I it's hard to imagine what it would be like. I mean, and I can, because in my field, you talk to young people all the time who are coming into the field of education who, they've grown up with all this technology and where it's going. Mm-hmm. Whereas, I remember really being excited about the giant speakers my stepbrother and I used to have that we would place out there. So when we had to chop wood or work outside in the yard, we'd put his giant speakers and blast some music and have you don't need those giant speakers anymore. I just need my phone and a nice little Bose. I can be making way more music and drive the neighbors just as crazy now. Without all that, it's pretty cool. Now, I do have to say this before we go any further, but talking about emerging technologies, it's really nice though that some of the newer generations have decided that the LP is the way to go. So I just
I still have some.
Nice.
We can play them up anytime.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at to this point, I think you and I are about the same age, and I can remember, when being in school, the teachers would try to make copies of a test, right? And yes. I forgot this machine, but you take it and you'd roll it around, and it would, there's the paper with the test on it. But there was some chemical that went around with it as well, and it's really strong chemical smell. And I mean, if you think about that and where we are today, it's really seems like horse and buggy days compared to where we are.
It sure does.
Districts now.
I think they were called. I'm sure they had some technical name. They're like duplicating machines or something like that. But they turned that knob and they put the chemical inside of it, and they turned that thing, and those things would feel damp and wet if they had just done it and stuff like this. And
funny.
You see kids sniffing the test. You're like, give me that thing. What are you doing?
Oh my God.
Dude. Anyway, yes, those are interesting days. But just like the overhead projector and the big real movie projector, the reel to reel, right, where they put the big reel on the thing, and right, and now we've moved into this world of streaming that because we went through the video, the VHS, and all that sort of stuff. But the amazing thing is how much is out there that if you have the connectivity, the different devices we have today can help you into the streaming world, so that you can actually and do like we're doing. I mean, you're out west and I'm in the South and doing pretty good right now. So good stuff. All right. So let's get on to what Olivia is. Tell us what it is.
Yeah. So we started Olivia to address a very key issue in the U.S. and worldwide. By the way, worldwide, there's about 1 billion students that don't have access to viable broadband. But when I first learned about how big the issue is in the U.S., I was actually flabbergasted. I mean, literally, realizing that this issue is in every single state, no matter where you go. And in fact, right in Silicon Valley, you drive 40 miles over to the coast in Half Moon Bay and Pescadero, there are 4,000 students that struggle with internet. And you go further south past San Jose and the problems. And so in California alone, for example, there's 1.5 million students that struggle with internet connectivity. Wow. Texas, 1.7 million. Georgia, there's 500,000 students that struggle with internet connectivity. So just about everywhere you look, there is this problem. And as we were discussing earlier on, COVID was the point when everybody started realizing how bad the issue was as these schools moved towards a digital format and trying to access a different medium to present to students, and realizing that 40% of students don't have access to viable broadband, and it really was a eye opener to me. And so we looked at developing a platform that doesn't require broadband to deliver digital resources. Once that thought came together, we realized we could do this, and we can do it inexpensively, and we can do it for every student across the U.S. And once we realized that we're able to create this platform that works both online and offline, then we realized the power of what we can do, because the platform itself, from a technological perspective, it takes a playbook out of, let's say the credit card industry, Visa, right? You've got these payment terminals. They are in rural, retailers. They work offline. All the software, everything you're doing in calculations and swiping the card, all that stuff is online. The only time they go online is when they want to move data up and back down. And so that same logic is what we've done with Olivia. So we have a device. It's issued to a student. The device works just like a Wi-Fi hotspot, but it's not connected to the internet. It also has storage on the device. And so what we do is we store all the content that the teachers are creating through their learning management systems, and then create a library of content, videos, podcasts, and ebooks that are either directly aligned with the subject matters, or we're looking at how we engage students with content and information that they may be interested in. And so the idea here is to make sure that we deliver what the school wants and the teachers are developing, and then adding value around the content. So we can do things like providing career focused content, or adding advanced courses that the local community colleges are offering, workforce development programming. And so all of those things allow us to, this platform allows us to deliver those things. And what we're doing is going above and beyond what the teachers are delivering in wanting to ensure that the students are doing their homework assignments, et cetera. But we're adding value by opening up this other content that really is important for these students. For example, financial literacy programs. We hear about wanting to add that channel of content on our device. So long story short, we can take this content, we can put it on a device, it's called Olivia. That device can be deployed anywhere. Student takes their laptop, logs onto it, just like a hotspot, and then what they see is their homework assignments and this channel of content, again, videos, podcasts, ebooks, workbooks, doesn't matter to us. We really echo what the school wants on those devices and what the students can have access on that device.
That's so cool, because this is a long way from having a modem plugged into the wall and a 386 or 486 it's booting up, man. We're getting that's a far cry from that. This is awesome, and just the whole thing, the thought that it has the content in it, and it's sitting there waiting for you to access it to be able to do your homework. I think that's just an amazing.
Yeah, and I think one of the elements that we made sure that was incorporated into the technology is the fact that students can have access to their homework. They then can do their homework, right? They can upload a paper, whatever the teacher's instructing them to do as part of the assignment. And for the worst case scenario, for the students that don't have any internet at home whatsoever, they can bring that device back to school, plug it into a hub in the classroom. It uploads the homework and downloads any new content that's curated during the period that device has been offline. Now, if students have, let's say DSL at home, they can plug in the device and then it'll automatically update behind the scenes. But, what's interesting here is that even with students that may have some internet connectivity at home, it's still a problem, right? You can have your brothers and sisters on the internet along with your mom and dad trying to do work. All of a sudden that network is overwhelmed and the performance is below par. So you don't have to worry about that with Olivia, right? When you plug it in, and the only thing the student's going to have access to is the content that's being curated for them. And one other benefit that comes out of that is it's a walled garden. So when they log on to it and they're into looking at the assignments and the content, the fact that they can't go off to YouTube and start looking at and being distracted by going off in other areas, it literally is designed for the education, the school districts and what they're trying to deliver and the experiences that they're trying to make. And my point here is that, with these initiatives with ISPs, it's great that you can get internet, but it's really education is a subset of what they're delivering. And we're focused in on the number one issue for why you want to drive broadband into a community is education and creating what resources those schools are investing in and, making sure that that's being deployed for all students, whether they've got internet connectivity or not.
I love that. And, I gotta ask you, because you're talking about how, putting this together and what it does and all this. What developed the initiative for making Olivia real? I mean, there are a lot of ideas out there, but they never, go beyond the idea or just some sort of model or something like that. How did it actually become a thing?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I this is kind of the environment I grew up in. Right, as I was early in my career, I worked for Visa, the credit card company, and I worked in the innovation group. So our group was looking at how we either took new services to a market and establishing that, or work with technology companies to implement technologies that would help propagate more transactions in a vertical. And so I got the bug then. I realized that I really love innovation because it's hard. To take a concept and actually deliver it requires a lot of focus, a lot of energy and investment. And so I could see companies both struggle and be successful. And so, as I was looking further into my career, I really decided I wanted to do something, right? I really wanted to see how I could go out and deliver a service or technology that had an impact. And so I got the bug in Silicon Valley. This is where I was living at the time, and ended up, as you do, working for startups. And so I worked for a handful of startups. And then as things evolved, and the idea of Olivia really came out of the COVID, right? Realizing very quickly that when COVID showed up, that I started focusing in on what the problems were as I was hearing about them, and realizing it was all about data. I realized how big the problem was, and nobody seemed to be addressing the problem as we were trying to address it in developing the platform. So it really is kind of a, how did I get here? Well, it's an interesting road, and always is.
That's cool. I appreciate you talking about it, because I know it's a complicated process, but it's awesome to think about an idea becoming real, and especially when it takes time and effort to make it get to there. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is, so did you have to seek outside funding to help bring Olivia to market? I mean, or was it just a combination of people working on it that were able to make it happen?
And this is a trick question, because any startup needs and requires capital, right?
Right,
so the question is, where is that capital coming from? And, and I think in today's environment, which is a challenging environment, to be frank, the access to seed capital is something that you really have to work hard at, because there's so much noise in the marketplace about everything else going on. And so we started the company, and we were fortunate to work with a philanthropic group that helped. They saw the vision, and they helped initially fund some of those along with us bootstrapping the company, i.e. investing in our own resources. But, what's exciting to me is that as I started Olivia, I didn't realize that Olivia really, in my mind, has become a mission, right? We're solving a real problem. We've had some great stories about how this is already impacting students. And so my focus now is looking at working with groups of investors that are really mission focused as well, right? Looking to help solve real problems in the industry. And so we're in that transition of looking at and reaching out to a network of investors, either seed capital or in the VC arena, that are aligned with what we're trying to do. And so we've gotten some really great feedback and interest. And so at this point, we're at the moment in time, ready to go to that next level and expand the products and services throughout the U.S.
I love that. It's just a kind of and I appreciate you going there, because it's just an amazing thing to hear the kind of like those processes and how you have to, trying to find the people that can help you make it happen, I guess is my point, that will help see see the direction, see the vision type of thing. So good stuff. All right. So, you've talked about some of its capabilities. It has a lot of capabilities. I mean, like being able to work offline. You want to talk about some of the others? I mean, just how that works?
Yeah, Stephen. So this is interesting because we were focused on a problem, and then what we found is the use cases extend and keep growing, right? In terms of how this technology is addressing other issues. And so when we looked at, the core focus, it was ensuring students had access to digital resources at home. But what we found is that we started talking to schools. There's a school in Hawaii, and they had, and this is actually something that is nationwide, but absenteeism, right? And how could this play a role in absenteeism? In that we could provide a student with a device. They can go, they don't have to show up to school, but they can continue to do their assignments and engage with content and look at other resources they have access to help them. And what we found is that once they have the device and they're engaged, they actually start coming back to school because they have to upload the homework. And, we had a story where, unfortunately, one of the students, she got pregnant and then went and had the baby, but the principal was trying to see how she got her back into school. Fortunately, she had an Olivia device, and out of the blue, she shows up, says, "I've done all my homework. Here, I want to upload my homework, and I want to continue to work on graduating." And so she came back to school once or twice a week, uploaded the homework, got new assignments, and ended up graduating. And the principal told us that without Olivia, she probably would not have graduated that year.
Cool.
So, this is where I think we have some really interesting impact. But we're also looking at how do we, and again, we're being asked to do some of this, is offering workforce development. So for students that are not higher ed bound, in college bound, then looking at how we get workforce development programming at the high school level, where they can start, engaging with either getting certificates or understanding what it takes to get a certificate in a certain area. So that's an exciting area that we see, and a lot of interest around that. Other areas, for example, financial literacy. This is probably very high on the list, but we can also provide programming around financial literacies, and we're working with various different institutions to help provide the programming, in some cases underwriting the content as well. And so the other thing was really just looking to see how our platform really provides access to resources for local community initiatives. And we realized that this is not about us. It's not about the state. It's about the communities that we're serving. And so they have great content that's being created locally that can also be incorporated in on the device. And again, focused in on how you engage students and making that productive for both the students and giving teachers essentially content that they couldn't find themselves because they just don't have enough time, and adding those resources on top of the platform. So that's kind of where we are and what we can do. And the exciting part is, again, we walk into a school and they said, hey, can you do these things, right? Can you add AP courses or advanced courses from the local community college so that students that are struggling to access those courses can now have access to those courses where they don't have access to that content because they're offline. And so that's where this gets very exciting for us, is that this is really not about us, but how we curate this, what I would call education network. That's a private network designed for the school district to be deployed and works anywhere and for any student in those environments.
That is so awesome. And, it's, one of the things we were chit-chatting about before we started recording was that, during COVID, especially I know where I was located in rural parts of South Georgia, they had to provide, they had this device that went on a bus and they drove it to a giant church parking lot across these different counties, and people would be able to come to that area and hook into the internet. And one of the things that, and then work on their assignments and so forth with these devices, Chromebooks and things like that. And why is connectivity so important? Because we really learned a huge lesson in those days, if you're paying attention, because suddenly we realized that we had a lot of kids and families that when they answered surveys and said things like, yes, we have connectivity, they were actually talking about, a cell phone or something like that, not really using it for this type of thing.
So, yeah, this is the heart of the issue, right? So I'll give you an example. Years ago, I used to get magazines, and had a whole stack of magazines that I would read and engage with, newspapers, etc. That doesn't exist anymore. And when I went to the show in London recently, I saw all of the major textbook publishers in the education space. I did not see one book, Stephen, not one. What I did see is all digital platforms and how they personalize content using AI, different ways to help schools build a digital platform. And so I had an interesting conversation with one of the executives at the show, and I said, what does 5 years down the road look like? And he said, you'd be hard pressed to find books. Why? Because the world is very dynamic. As certain states can apply certain standards, right, that are unique to that state. Well, guess what? If I'm a textbook publisher and that's in print and they change what the standards are, I have to go print a new book.
Yes.
So how do you address this? You have to do it digitally, right? But the bottom line is, what does digital resources do for students? Well, the research shows that students that have access to the digital resources are outperforming students that don't have digital resources. And that's everything from grade point average to attending higher ed. And so what the research is pointing to, in the way I read it, was that when a student is struggling with something, they can get on YouTube, go find a video nowadays, and it can explain, how this, how to answer these problems. So that, there is that resource. And for those students that don't have access to those resources and can't go search the internet, what do? Right? You are at a disadvantage. And I think as you're moving this forward, the schools really need to think about what their digital strategies are. And that digital strategy doesn't mean you've got laptops and Wi-Fi. Digital strategy needs to incorporate the digital resources that are riding on top of those networks and how those are being positioned and how those students can benefit from that. And so, again, this is where Olivia plays an interesting role, because we're able to help curate content. So if we know you're a sixth grade math teacher, we already know what curriculum you're teaching, the standards the state has applied to it. Why do you need to spend 20 minutes looking for a video when we already have sourced all that content for you? And you can pick a video on rational numbers, apply it to the homework assignment, and then point the students to the library to explore further, whether that's videos, podcasts, ebooks, whatever that is, to absorb more information around the subject matter. So that's the beauty, I think, of the way we've packaged this, is really looking at not only how does digital impact students, but also how does it create more efficiency for the teachers that are using these digital formats and being able to distribute that out to students. And we saw an opportunity to reduce that overhead and increase productivity for the teachers, and then to get those students more engaged in areas of interest. And the research shows the more those students are engaging, the more they're going to walk away learning something.
Yeah, and it's so important. I mean, where we've come from and where we are now in such really a quick amount of time. And if you don't have access to it, it's obviously putting you behind then. And if you have no knowledge of how to use it and so forth like that. So good stuff. I mean, all right. So how is Olivia marketed and sold? And what I really mean are you talking to entire school systems? Are you talking to individual schools? Are you talking with communities instead to make it accessible?
Yes to all of those, but I mean, let me clarify.
Okay.
Because, what I see is it is we're focusing on school districts, right? And calling on those districts, understanding what their challenges are, and then, making sure that we configure and support those challenges. And so it's interesting because originally we were just focused in on delivering our solution for those students that were disconnected. What we're finding is the schools are wanting to deploy it for all students. Why? Because of the walled garden, the higher quality of experience, the curated content that comes along with it. And so that's really been interesting from that perspective. But on the flip side, school districts and teachers and the whole environment, this, Stephen, extremely busy. So is digital equity number one on a school superintendent's mind? No, to be frank, it's not. It may be number 5 or maybe within the top 10, but so the question is, what can this technology do to help solve some other real pressing issues, absenteeism and other things that we think we can have an impact on? So the way we position this is really about understanding the problems the schools are up against and how this solution may fit in to help create a seamless way for them to distribute content and a great way to engage those students. And so I think those are some really key components. But we also realize that this is a top-down strategy as well. So not only calling on school districts, but we are working with the states, right? And looking at how we work with the education departments, DOE in various different states that look at this and realize that this platform could be an education network for all students in the state. Why is that important? Because then the state can ensure the standards are being deployed and supported throughout the state. Data analytics that gives both the schools and superintendents and the state more insight to how students are consuming, engaging with content. And, the budgets are coming from the top end, right? So the governor's office and the DOE. So we have a strategy in calling on that end of the business to just make sure that policies, and we understand those and how we align with what the legislature is doing, as well as how that fits into DOE and ultimately being distributed down to the school district. So you have to balance those two things out, whether we're calling on school districts or calling in on the education departments, really understanding those two environments and then bringing those together to be successful with our way we address the market.
Very cool. All right. So if you had a chance to talk with a massive group of nothing but superintendents, all right, school system superintendents, all right, and you're trying to get them to understand why they want to be using Olivia technologies, what would you be telling them? What's that thing you would want them to remember when they left out of that auditorium?
Yeah. So there are a couple of key factors, I think, that are really important for superintendents. One is we look to simplify the process of managing digital resources inside a school. Funny enough, we were asked for whether Olivia could work inside a classroom, right? Because if you put Olivia inside the classroom, you're reducing the bandwidth overhead that the school has to pay for and or struggles with, right? And so, there are a lot of different pockets of issues that start looking at, and it's very complicated in terms of how you deploy digital technology within the school. And so my point to superintendents is we help round out your digital strategy, right? We're looking at all aspects of how that digital resources are deployed, curated, and managed inside the school district and inside the classroom, as well as outside the classroom. And so, we developed this so that the IT person doesn't have to spend, hours and hours and hours configuring devices. We take care of all that. We literally, it's, you turn on, we deliver devices and issue those devices to students. So it's the simplicity of that. But it goes, the other element here is, what is your digital strategy as a superintendent, and how is that playing out? And so again, looking at how Olivia is helping you either source those digital resources. So for example, we're working with Oxford Press that is looking to create a library of content that goes above and beyond what a single school district could negotiate on their own, right? And being able to deliver a higher quality experience for those students. But the other things that those superintendents have to worry about, whether that is ensuring the teachers are, compliant to the standards that the states might apply, that again, looking at other challenges related to, absenteeism, to build a better solution for students to engage with higher ed and the community, local community colleges, and then workforce development programming on top of this as well. So we're doing all that and delivering that solution and making it easier for the superintendents, their staff, the curriculum design group to have a platform that's really theirs, right? And they can create it, they can curate it, they can deploy it anywhere for any student. And so I would say that's my message to superintendents, that this is really your network, not ours, and we work with you to create that solution.
Very nice. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's when we're talking about for the most part, in many systems, they're going to be the ones that you're going to inspire to go, yeah, we got to make sure this happens. And the world I came from and am in now, I mean, many of the superintendents learn who have the CDL license can drive a bus. We're driving those buses, and they'd love to know that they were delivering something that actually had the capabilities like you're talking about, which would be that here's the homework and here's the exact stuff instead of all this other stuff that's going to distract you from getting that stuff done. So,
right. It's about simplifying it, right? And
right.
as we're talking about before we got on the podcast, it's like what your cell phone does, right? You don't know how it works.
Right.
You just know that it works, and it creates real productivity in terms of access to emails and, messaging and all these great things. And that's our focus. You don't have to worry about how Olivia works. We're delivering the end result, which is a better experience both for the teachers and for the students. And that's where our focus is.
Very cool. So Ryan, how does someone, school system or school, how do they start off? How do they engage? Where would you send them to get started to try and talk with you guys about it?
Yeah, so for school superintendents or the staff that may be interested in looking at our solution, they can reach out in different ways. We have on LinkedIn, Olivia Technologies. There is information there, and they can also enter their information to reach out to us. But I'm a people person. I love engaging, and so. We've got the ability to go to our website and engage us that way, but I also say that they can engage us through our sending us an email. They can reach us at marketing.olivia.education. And they can also reach out to me personally. I'd be more than happy to speak with them. And that my email is ryan@olivia.education. And so those are some of the ways that they can reach out and learn more about what we're up to and how they can use our system. So, our website does, give them more details about how that works as well.
Very cool. And I'll have that information in the show notes so it makes it easy to find and link to. So good stuff. All right. So Ryan, before we finish up, I've got a couple of questions that I want to ask you that are just, I like to ask my guests. And the first one is this, how do you overcome the feeling that so much is going on that you may want to quit or give up?
Well, Stephen, you don't know me. I don't quit very easily. So,
nice.
Look, I'm telling you, any startup has its ups and downs, and you really have to have some tenacity and some mental focus, because nothing ever works out the way you want it to. And so I think you focus in on what you're trying to do and the impact that you're going to have. And believe me, that's what drives me. Like I said, Stephen, before, I wouldn't have found myself in the education space, 4 years ago. If you told me this, I would say, what? But as I saw a problem, wanted to solve it, realized we could solve it, I have now become extremely passionate about the impact that we can have on the industry in a unique way. And so that's what's driving me. And every day I get off another phone call saying, wow, that was a great conversation. And realizing that what we're doing is starting to resonate and how we can change the market. Because to be frank, right now, the marketplace, you're being held hostage by broadband. It's not the fault of AT&T or Verizon, but literally you cannot implement a digital strategy unless you have broadband. And if half of your school can't connect, that's really limiting how those resources can be delivered. And so, again, this is what's driving me. The fact that I know we can solve this problem, that we have a really good solution to go down this path, and also learning about the industry and knowing how passionate the superintendents are and how passionate and dedicated the teachers are. I mean, that's really mind-blowing to hear some of the stories about the teachers. And so, again, it really adds a lot of energy to me when I think we can have those conversations, seeing how excited the teachers are getting about what we do, excited about how the students are reacting to what we're doing, and knowing that we can have real impact. So I think that's really the key and what's driving me and what's going to continue to drive me in this space.
Thanks for sharing. That's so cool. And I like the first part of the answer, which is, I don't think you don't know me very well. I don't quit. It's like nice. Nice. I like that. Hey, last question. Do you have a teacher in your past who made a difference in your life? If so, who was it? What would you say if given the chance to say, thank you?
Stephen, this is really interesting, because I think if you ask anybody, was there a teacher in their life that had an impact? You would absolutely say yes. I remember actually several teachers, right? And why is that? Because I think the teachers, when you find teachers that really engage and care about you and are really either trying to push you a little harder to have better outcomes, right? And telling you that you've got the capabilities of doing something and being good at it, right? That's what's really important, and that's really long lasting. And, what I'll say is, most recently, right, it's not me, but my son, was going through high school. And, as you get into high school, you're wondering, okay, the pressure's on. What am I going to do? What kind of degree am I going to do, or what kind of work am I going to? And that's a lot of pressure for somebody at that age. This is where I think the impact really happens. And in his case, he had a teacher, he took a course in environmental science, and this, I could tell immediately as he got into the course, the light bulbs were going off. And ultimately, that's where he ended up saying, I want to pursue a degree in this area, because I can see, again, how this might change my life and how interested I am in it. That's why it is so important for teachers to really go that extra step to engage with students, and knowing that just a little push and a little encouragement goes a long way for any student that you want to, that light bulb go off and head down that path.
Yeah, so cool. Good stuff. It's impact that other people have on our lives all through, whether they're formerly a teacher or not, just is that teacher role is so, if you let them, because there are some kids who don't, and
yes,
it comes down the road, but Awesome stuff. Ryan, thank you so much for sharing about Olivia Technologies. Connectivity is so important, and being able to bring it to the people who don't have it, and where it's scarce and far between, is so important. What an awesome tool, and I wish you the best in all you do.
Stephen, thank you for the opportunity to share this story, and really enjoyed the conversation, and look forward to maybe another time as we're progressing.
Hey, you have been listening to Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your voice is right here. The opinions expressed on Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.